Life never stands still. The world is a hectic place. Everything is always on the move. It is never quite enough to simply capture a snapshot of life at any given instance. Part of nature's beauty lies in the ways it shifts and changes. The land comes to life in a concerto of color one day, to then enter a deep white slumber on another day. The sky dances in shapes seen never before and never again, not content with ever halting its performance. And of course, young, fragile creatures mature, evolve, age, and die. Every moment is precious, every insight valuable. This specific kind of insight, the ability to study subjects across time, is a luxury the Hunters Guild usually lacks. Primarily concerned with mitigating the threat of monster-to-human encounters, the guild only rarely manages to observe monsters across their various life stages. After all, the overwhelming majority of the incidents that the guild is concerned with happen with adult monsters. In fact, for the vast majority of monsters, their juvenile state has either never been sighted or only been spotted a scant few times. This creates a sizable hole in the scientific canon of the guild, and makes the cases in which a full life cycle has been observed that much more valuable. One such case can be found in jungles and deserts, where the soil is light and the sun burns hot. Here, an attentive observer might stumble across a small, jittering dune of sand, blowing air out from the ground like a small spout. On closer inspection, this curious formation will erupt and reveal itself to be a Hermitaur sitting in its favorite spot. Hermitaurs are carapaceons, a fairly small class of monsters that are all part of the decapods. They are related to many non-monster animals, such as crabs and lobsters, a relation that can be plainly seen in the very crab-like Hermitaurs. They are specifically part of the infraorder Brachyura, meaning short tail. This refers to the fact that Hermitaurs, just like regular true crabs, have short tails that are folded under the body and usually invisible. Where Hermitaurs differ from regular crabs is their size. Even the smallest Hermitaur is comparable in size to the spider crab, the largest regular crab. Their characteristic red shells are also notably more durable than anything seen in regular crustaceans, and are able to even deflect some human weapons. Their only weak spot is a squishy backside, which they protect by covering their backs in bony shells that they find early on in life, similar to hermit crabs. Due to these impressive defenses, Hermitaurs live fairly unbothered lives. Most predators simply do not consider the effort of cracking one open worth their time. And so, Hermitaurs sit in the sand for most of the day, using their pincers to feed on all sorts of small delicacies. Those living in the desert may devour small sand critters and mud dwellers near oases, while jungle Hermitaurs may spend more of their energy to eat small fish at the beach or peel off nutritious moss from rocks. They may also sometimes attempt to ambush smaller animals by burying themselves entirely in the sand and leaping at prey when it gets close. How successful this strategy actually is has not been definitively determined yet. Hermitaurs do not pose a threat to humans most of the time. While they can be somewhat aggressive if you get too close, they generally tend to themselves. This, coupled with their close relation to regular crabs, actually sparked some debate when they were first discovered. Was it really worth it to consider them monsters under the jurisdiction of the Hunters Guild? If they don't threaten humans and are so similar to creatures that we already don't call monsters, Is it really appropriate to make them the guild's responsibility? This discussion was luckily quickly laid to rest after one crucial discovery was made. The commonly seen Hermitaurs were actually all juveniles. Based on how much more frequently Hermitaurs are observed in the state, it is generally assumed that these carapaceons spend a long time as juveniles. It is currently unclear what triggers their metamorphosis, as well as how old these juveniles actually have to be at minimum to experience it. What is, however, known is that at some point in their lives, Hermitaurs experience a growth spurt. In the process of this growth, the bony shell on their backs eventually becomes too small for them. Once the Hermitaurs reach that critical size, where none of their juvenile shells fit them anymore, they burrow deep underground in search of a very special defensive tool. Not long after that, they emerge fully grown, an ancient wyvern skull attached to their back, ready to claim the title bestowed to these enormous adults. Daimyo Hermitaur. And they are monstrous indeed. Up to 6 meters tall, these behemoths prowl the same areas as their young brethren, joining them in their foraging and keeping the entire group safe merely by their presence. Unlike their younger brothers, however, Daimyo Hermitaurs also spend a lot of time traveling underground, using their powerful pincers to dig across vast distances while surveying their surroundings with an impeccable sense of hearing. Daimyo Hermitaurs are passive giants and not particularly aggressive. They can, however, become defensive when spotting an unknown creature, which is when their fearsome abilities come into play. Their red shell is many times tougher than that of the juvenile Hermitaur, but it is also extremely light. Due to this, the Daimyo Hermitaur can move shockingly fast, outmaneuvering enemies and closing distances quickly. Its enormous claws can do tremendous damage, as they are now specialized in picking apart large prey. The claws can also serve as shields, as their large surface is covered in hardened carapace that can easily withstand most attacks. It can also produce a pressurized stream of water from its mandibles, giving it a powerful ranged attack option. But perhaps its most ferocious method of attack is how it uses its shell. Daimyo Hermitaurs almost exclusively choose the skulls of ancient giant wyvern as their shells. These skulls resemble that of the modern monoblos, while being much larger in size generally. Some researchers believe that these skulls may be the remains of an ancient ancestor of the horn wyverns, who may have been plentiful and whose bodies now saturate the underground. This has, however, not been verified as of now. Wherever these skulls may come from, what is an undeniable truth is that Daimyo Hermitaurs are exceptionally skilled at using them. While the skull offers defense just as it is, the drill-like horn of the deceased wyvern can also be used for devastating attacks. Thanks to its powerful legs, the Hermitaur can launch itself backwards towards enemies in an attempt to skewer them, or leap up above them to crush them. Its agility, coupled with its defense and destructive power, make the Daimyo Hermitaur quite formidable. And yet, both licensed hunters and illegal poachers commonly attempt to slay adult Hermitaurs despite all of these defenses. The reason for this lies in the carapaceon's abdomen. Here, ingested sand and bodily fluids mix and compress over the Hermitaur's lifetime to form a beautiful pearl, as shiny as it is valuable. It is a treasure well worth risking life and limb for. Experienced hunters also know how to exploit the Hermitaur's main weakness, its sense of hearing. In order to navigate underground, the daimyo Hermitaur uses its acute hearing to map out its surroundings. While that is quite useful, it can be the monster's downfall. A well-timed sonic bomb can startle and fluster the creature, breaking up its defensive posture and leaving it wide open. This opportunity is thus often exploited by those who wish to claim the daimyo's treasure. Generally though, Hermitaurs do not cause too much trouble. A daimyo wandering too close to established travel routes or appearing near a settlement does incite concern and retaliation, but the guild usually handles those cases quite quickly. The larger impact of the Hermitaurs is their role as a scientific research subject. Being able to observe a monster across its entire lifespan and across its various forms like this is exceptionally rare, and has already provided crucial insights into the life of extant megafauna. One breakthrough the guild is still hoping for is to actually witness the exact moment a Hermitaur becomes a daimyo. An unlikely dream, since that transformation seems to happen underground. Another area of guild science the Hermitaurs impacted was the classification of subspecies. In the early days of the guild, the term subspecies was attached quite liberally to describe any instance or sighting of an altered or unusual variation of a previously known monster. This was, like many early guild conventions, mostly a functional decision, a way to let hunters in the field know in a single word that they'd be dealing with something familiar but different. This thoroughly unscientific approach attracted much ire and criticism over the years, however. If the guild was to become a serious repository of knowledge and research on monsters, it had to dedicate itself to actually classify the world in a consistent scientific manner. The vestiges of this debate are still playing out to this day, as various monster subspecies are still getting re-evaluated for reclassification. And one of the most important cases in this paradigm shift was that of the plum daimyo Hermitaur. It superficially appears to be a different species of Hermitaur. Its body structure is nearly identical, but its shell displays a deep purple coloration rather than the typical red. They are roughly the same size as a red daimyo Hermitaur, but tend to carry a different kind of skull on their backs. While red daimyos seem to prefer skulls resembling those of giant monoblos, plum daimyos are often seen wearing the skulls of ancient giant diablos. Like their red brothers, plum daimyos are quite agile, maybe even more so. They are also notably more aggressive, and use their water beam more liberally. All in all, they fulfilled many of the typical characteristics of a separate, but highly related species. So, the plum daimyo Hermitaur was classified as a subspecies of the Hermitaur genus. But almost immediately, a problem arose. While plum daimyo Hermitaurs were sighted on multiple occasions, no one had ever seen a juvenile plum Hermitaur, which remains true to this very day. Considering that juvenile Hermitaurs are so abundant compared to their adult counterparts, this discrepancy aroused suspicion among researchers. Even after tiresome investigation, no small Hermitaur displaying this purple coloration was ever found. If the plum Hermitaur truly was a subspecies, one would expect to find its juveniles right along the red ones. This caused a new hypothesis to arise. The plum daimyo Hermitaur was not a distinct species, but a common discoloration in adult Hermitaurs. The fact that no juveniles of this color have ever been found suggests that this change in coloration occurs during or around the moment of maturity. Not long after, a possible cause for this was proposed. plum daimyo hermitaurs were noted to be much more picky eaters than their red brothers, sticking to a specific species of fish. It was thus possible that their coloration, as well as their behavioral differences, were a consequence of this altered diet. More research is still being conducted, but the major impact of this case was that it further emphasized the importance of revisiting old subspecies classifications and verifying if they still hold up to scrutiny. So while many guild textbooks still name the plum daimyo hermitaur as a subspecies, it is functionally much closer to a variant, an altered individual, rather than a genetically distinct species. The plum daimyo is, however, not the only known variation of the Hermitaur species. These carapacians are also affected by deviation, the phenomenon where unique factors and highly unusual changes produce exceedingly powerful individuals within a species. Deviant hermitaurs are known as stone-fist hermitaurs, and are, like all deviants, exceptionally rare. It is not known exactly what causes a regular hermitaur to grow into this monstrosity. Some research has suggested that it may be due to a rare endocrine defect that results in hormonal imbalance. Either way, stone-fist hermitaurs are defined by their enormous size, easily dwarfing even the largest regular daimyos. Their shell is darkened and their claws are enlarged, with the left claw being disproportionately enormous, as well as sporting a unique coloration and pattern. Due to their size, they also seek out even larger monobloss skulls, likely buried deeper in the earth. Like all deviants, stone-fist hermitaurs are quite dangerous. At their size, even a sporadic temper tantrum turns into a walking catastrophe. Subduing one of these behemoths is no easy task either. Their dark shell is many times harder than that of regular hermitaurs, sturdy enough to even deflect bullets and armed projectiles. Their enlarged left claw, the eponymous stone fist, can be used to bludgeon and crush enemies with devastating power, able to pulverize solid rock with ease. It is thus lucky for everyone that stone-fist hermitaurs do not emerge frequently. The hermitaur is by far the most commonly cited carapacian species. That is in part due to their large populations, but it's also a result of their habitats. Hermitaurs inhabit warm areas, such as deserts, jungles, and forested valleys. Not just that, but these red carapacians spend most of their time out in the open, sitting on beaches and oases lightly covered in sand. It is thus quite easy for humans to stumble upon them. Of the 3 confirmed genuses of carapacians, hermitaurs are the most thoroughly researched for that very reason. Which is not to say that the guild has gathered no information on the other carapacians. Within Brachyura, the same infraorder that includes the hermitaur, one also finds the red crab's closest relative. But in order to observe it out in the wild, one must visit landscapes quite unlike the hermitaur's sunny home. For this crab dwells in the harsh corners of the world, in marshes and volcanic caves. Only in these rough environments can one encounter a Ceanataur. Superficially, they resemble their relatives. Like the hermitaur, Ceanataurs are roughly crab-like in appearance, while being much larger than most known regular crabs. Also like the hermitaur, Ceanataurs protect their backs with a thick bony shell that must be replaced as the creature grows. Both species also tend to form small groups of 2 to 4 individuals, in which they don't exactly cooperate and rather simply stay near each other for protection. There are, however, some notable differences. While Hermitaurs can be somewhat territorial and have a fierce reputation, especially within the novice halls of Dundorma, they mostly stick to themselves and back off once their immediate surroundings seem safe. Ceanataurs, meanwhile, are downright aggressive, chasing down interlopers relentlessly and descending onto any creature that crosses their path. This increased aggression is likely a result of their different lifestyle. Ceanataurs live predominantly in caves, where they snack on insects and small critters. They are even known to nibble on mineral deposits from time to time. Their caves are their kingdom, and they defend it much more jealously than their red cousins defend their beaches. This aggressive behavior is also necessary for another food source for the Ceanataur: the kills of other predators. Unlike the Hermitaur, Ceanataur also actively scavenge corpses of larger animals, which sometimes involves a standoff with the predator that actually secured the bounty. The Ceanataur may be small, but with their fiery temper and ambitious bravado, a trio of them are known to be able to chase off other monsters somewhat regularly, if only temporarily, giving the crabs a chance to steal a few morsels before scuttling off. An intense life like this requires some physical adaptations. The blue shell of the Ceanataur is not quite as sturdy as the Hermitaurs. This minor reduction in defense has a massive payoff. The shell is even lighter, allowing for much faster movement. In order to take full advantage of this, the Ceanataur have developed strong legs with highly flexible joints. Combined, these two features make the Ceanataur an extremely agile critter. While they may not be as well defended as their red cousins, they can easily run circles around most threats, weaving between attacks and closing distances rapidly. This ability pairs especially well with the Ceanataur's modified pincers. They are much slimmer and sharper than those of the Hermitaur, and can move much faster as well. This enables a hit-and-run strategy, where a Ceanataur can scuttle around an opponent to disorient them, slash at them rapidly when an opening presents itself, and then retreat just as quickly. Rinse and repeat, and most predators will have to at least consider backing off. Of course, all of these abilities only go so far in mitigating the Ceanataur's main weakness: its size. While large in comparison with crabs, in a world of monsters, the Ceanataur is quite diminutive. Facing a powerful opponent can easily spell disaster if approached carelessly. In such situations, the Ceanataur can rely on its final gambit. Unlike the Hermitaur, Ceanataurs actually grow a small venom sac inside their bodies. The venom it produces is quite mild, and is mostly used to be spat at small prey as it tries to escape. This sac is a pretty weak organ overall, and it degenerates over the Ceanataur's lifespan. And yet, it is the Ceanataur's trump card. The venom may be weak, but when mixed into the Ceanataur's mouth, it turns into a deep purple foam, violently gushing out of the Carapacion's mouth. The color and the ferocity of the bubbles, coupled with the Ceanataur's boisterous demeanor, create a strong bluff that can be surprisingly effective at intimidating larger opponents. While the venom is too weak to meaningfully harm most large monsters, the mere display of it can be enough to make an enemy reconsider, giving the Ceanataur an opening to escape. In some cases, this strategy can even cause predators to retreat outright. A bold and dangerous tactic, and one that the small Ceanataur pulls off admirably. But just like the Hermitaur, Ceanataur do not stay small forever. Their commonly seen small stature is in fact also a sign of youth, as just like their cousins, Ceanataur spend a long time as juveniles. As a Ceanataur grows, it will eventually grow too big for the small shell on its back, while also simultaneously losing the ability to produce venom as its venom sac deteriorates and dries up. Once that happens, the Ceanataur will mimic its cousin and dig deep underground to grow into its enormous adult size. In the same process, it will also look for a new shell to protect its vulnerable backside. Not long after, it will re-emerge as a fully grown adult, now bestowed with the name Shogun Ceanataur. While the daimyo Hermitaur largely resembles a massively scaled up young Hermitaur, the Shogun Ceanataur undergoes a more drastic transformation. Its head elongates into a tall blue pillar, its legs thicken, and its pincers essentially invert, forming an intricate double-bladed structure. Shogun Ceanataur are also noted to choose a wider variety of shells. While some may inhabit wyvern skulls, such as those of massive ancient gravios, many also wear other kinds of hardened fossil structures. Ceanataurs seem to be quite anxious about finding shells, which may be why they are so much less picky about the shells they choose. This anxiety can also be seen in the well-documented fact that should its shell be damaged or broken, a Shogun Ceanataur will interrupt whatever it was doing to frantically dive into the ground in search of a new shell. It's even been theorized that a shogun collects suitable shells ahead of time and stores them underground beneath its territory, to have quick and easy access to a new shell at all times. Which proves to be a sound strategy, as Shogun Ceanataurs often find themselves in combat and in need of replacement shells. While their bodies may have changed, they are just as aggressive as they were in their youth, if not even more so. Shoguns are extremely defensive of their territory, and they will not hesitate to attack any who intrude into its caves. Having lost its venom, the shogun now relies exclusively on its physicality. Its powerful legs retain their agility, and despite its size, the Shogun Ceanataur is still exceptionally fast. It can even walk on cave ceilings by digging the sharp ends of its legs into the rock, allowing for another angle of attack. If the shell it currently wears features an appropriate opening, such as the mouth of a wyvern skull, the shogun can also use a specialized nozzle on its backside to spray a pressurized stream of urine at its enemies. This gives the Carapacion a powerful, foul-smelling, long-ranged option. But its most effective weapons are its modified pincers. They function in two states, folded and unfolded. In the folded state, they largely resemble a battle axe, with a sharp edge that allows for cutting and slashing. The hinge of the pincers is at the top of the structure, allowing the bottom to be opened to grab and pinch objects. In this form, the pincers are quite dangerous already, but their relatively short range makes them seem easy to evade. That is where their second form, the unfolded state, comes into play. By fully extending the hinge of its pincers, the Shogun Ceanataur reveals its massive, bladed claws, extending like switchblades and curved like scythes. It's these unique structures that give the Ceanataur its nickname, Sickle Crab. These massive blades are extremely sharp and finely serrated. Their edges are covered in a layer of metallic carapace, making them both durable and deadly. A single swipe of them can easily shred an opponent to pieces, and the serrations ensure that the resulting wounds bleed copiously. Thanks to the mobile hinge, these claws can bend and extend flexibly, giving them a much wider range than one might expect. The result of all of this is that the Shogun Ceanataur can quickly and brutally cleave its foes apart at nearly any distance. Luckily for everyone, Shogun Ceanataurs are generally unlikely to cross paths with humans. They are already rarer than Hermitaurs, and only inhabit cavernous areas that are usually far from human settlements. Like Hermitaurs, Shogun Ceanataurs also produce valuable pearls, but the thought of those sickle-like pincers gives most aspiring poachers second thoughts. Very rarely, Ceanataur are also hunted for their meat. It is considered an acquired taste, but wealthy gourmands are more than willing to commission a hunting party for this rare treat, usually in anticipation of some large festival or event. Another thing the Ceanataur has in common with the Hermitaur is its importance for the history of subspecies classification. The discovery that the plum daimyo Hermitaur was in fact likely not a separate species but rather a regular Hermitaur discolored by its diet was just one of many incidents that led to the still ongoing reform of the guild's phylogeny. Numerous cases are being re-evaluated, and one of them is that of the so-called Ceanataur subspecies, the Terra Shogun Ceanataur. Defined by a striking orange and red coloration, Terra Shoguns inhabit many of the same areas as regular Ceanataurs. Just as is the case with the plum daimyo, no juveniles of the Terra Shogun Ceanataur have ever been sighted. Terra Shoguns are mostly identical to their blue brothers, mostly differing in their behavior. They are considered even more aggressive, preferring to rush down opponents directly. While their legs are just as strong, Terra Shoguns don't seem as keen on climbing on ceilings. Their preference regarding shells also varies. They seemingly seek out the skulls of black gravios specifically, identifiable by the blackened surface of the skull bones. Based on it sharing its habitat with regular Ceanataurs, the complete lack of Terra juveniles, and the discovery regarding the plum daimyo, guild consensus now assumes that the Terra Shogun Ceanataur is probably also not a true subspecies, and instead a regular Shogun Ceanataur that is discolored due to its diet. What part of its diet caused discoloration has not yet been determined. Nevertheless, its close relation to the Hermitaur and the similarities between the plum and Terra individuals suggests that the Terra Shogun Ceanataur is likely also a case of a misclassified subspecies that is much closer to a variant in reality. One final similarity between the Ceanataur and the Hermitaur genuses is that Ceanataurs can also produce deviants. However, unlike the Hermitaur deviant, the conditions that allow deviants to arise in Ceanataur are actually somewhat understood. It is an illustrative example that shows just how absurdly rare deviance actually is. In order for a deviant Ceanataur to emerge, 3 conditions must be met. First, very rarely, a Ceanataur is born without a venom sac. This seems to be a genetic defect that affects a minuscule part of the population. Second, this venomless Ceanataur has to survive until adulthood. Lacking the ability to produce its powerful threat display, as well as being unable to envenomate small prey for easier consumption, venomless Ceanataurs are unlikely to make it far. The only way they survive is by relying even more heavily on their mobility and their pincers. Should they make it to adulthood, these Ceanataurs are magnitudes more adept at physical combat due to their long and arduous struggle. Then, the third condition must occur. The venomless Ceanataur must, on its search for a suitable shell to reach maturity with, stumble onto the skull of a Glavenus. These brute wyverns possess sharp, ore-covered jaw protrusions that they use in life to sharpen their bladed tails. In death, these protrusions remain on the skull of the beast. Usually, Ceanataur ignore these skulls as the dense bones of brute wyvern tend to be too heavy for them. But a venomless Ceanataur, whose body has been hardened by adversity, instantly recognizes the immense value of this find. And so, it hoists the Glavenus skull onto its back and engages in a fascinating behavior. The flexible shoulder joints of the Ceanataur allow it to move its pincers behind its back and drag them across the skull's oar protrusions. In an incredible display of intelligence, the Ceanataur uses the Glavenus skull like a whetstone, much like the skull's owner once would have. In doing so, it sharpens the blades of its pincers even further, making them deadlier than ever. Over the years, as it continues to sharpen itself, the ore on the skull begins to rub off and fuse onto the Ceanataur's pincers, discoloring and distorting them. It is at this point that this individual becomes a fully formed deviant, which the guild calls Rustraiser Ceanataur. These deviants are thoroughly feared for their destructive power. A lifetime of carrying a heavy Glavenus skull has bulked up this Ceanataur's limbs considerably, making it even more physically imposing. The modified pincers are deadly beyond measure, able to cleave apart armor as if it were butter. It overall retains all of the abilities of a regular Shogun Ceanataur, but improved and perfected. Rustraiser Ceanataurs are also not entirely married to their Glavenus skull. While it forms the center of their survival strategy, they do also maintain an underground collection of backup shells, just like regular Shoguns. This allows them to switch shells when necessary, for example to a Gravios shell to allow for their urine beam. One new weakness the Rustraiser Ceanataur has to contend with is the composition of its pincer blades. The ore that is now fused into it can be quite sharp and destructive, but it also oxidizes quickly, forming a layer of rust that dulls the Ceanataur's blades, hence the name Rustraiser. While this is quickly remedied by another round of sharpening with the skull shell, it does impose an additional stressor onto the deviant, making it generally a lot more nervous and aggressive than it already was. Be that as it may, the Rustraiser Ceanataur is a force to be reckoned with, and one best left alone. These two genuses, Hermitaur and Ceanataur, as well as their variations and deviants, comprise nearly all known carapaceons. Nearly. There is another, a distant cousin that is so mysterious and elusive that it was long believed to be a myth, a collective illusion created by mass hysteria. In the northwest of the central continent, in the regions of Shrade and the outskirts of Dundorma, many fortresses lay scattered about. These are ancient fortifications, built to repel elder dragons such as the Lao Shan Lung, which historically passed through these areas. The legendary battles waged here have produced numerous tales and folklore. One such tale long terrified the children of the ancient continent. Ever so often, scouts would report sightings of an emaciated Lao Shan Lung, seemingly reduced to just a skeleton and yet still moving. The stories of this undead dragon were often dismissed as mere hogwash, until a massive Lao Shan Lung skull walked right into one of the local fortresses as a team of hunters was manning it. It was not an undead dragon, it was not even a full skeleton, just the skull of an elder dragon, carried on the back of an enormous carapaceon. This creature would soon after be named Shen Gaoren. Even today, nearly nothing is known about these massive carapaceons. Despite their size, they have proven extremely hard to track and study, and so most knowledge on the Shen Gaoren is based on the very few chance encounters the guild has had with it. At nearly 24 meters in height, it is easily one of the largest monsters to ever be recorded. Most of this height is due to the creature's disproportionately long legs, paired with equally long arms that end in rather small pincers. Its skin is as hard as metal, nearly impenetrable to any attacks. Being so large and so well defended, the Shen Gaoren moves slowly and with little regard for its surroundings. What on earth could hope to threaten a behemoth like this anyway? Like its fellow carapaceons, it also has a soft and squishy backside it must protect, which is why it wears the skull of a Lao Shan Lung on its back. As Laos are rare to begin with, this feature of the Shen Gaoren is often seen as evidence that their population must be quite small, perhaps only comprising less than 100 individuals. The most peculiar thing about Shen Gaoren is their behavior. They seemingly do not perceive humans as threats worth dealing with, as they will mostly remain calm and disinterested while near them. This calm demeanor, however, changes the moment the Shen Gaoren spots a fortress or similarly large building. Suddenly, the monster turns aggressive, besieging the fortress relentlessly in an attempt to tear it down. Researchers have suggested that in the logic of the Shen Gaoren, the only things that are as large as itself are mountains and other Shen Gaoren. So it might be that the Carapaceon mistakes large man-made structures as rivals it must battle, informing the ferocity with which it assaults the fortresses it encounters. At such a size, the Shen Gaoren does not have to try hard to cause damage. Its legs and arms can tear down walls with ease, and its tough exoskeleton is more than sturdy enough to shake off a few cannonballs. Its most interesting weapon, however, lies in its back. Like the Ceanataur, it can expel waste materials from a specialized nozzle in the abdomen. In the Shen Gaoren's case, it can produce large globules of acidic slime, which it can launch to a distance of up to 300 meters. This acid is extremely corrosive, burning through rock and steel rapidly. Unfortunately, it is also known that this acid can dissolve a grown human within a few agonizing minutes. This acid constitutes the most severe threat of a Shen Gaoren encounter. While it focuses its ire on the fortress, the size, range, and splashability of these acid attacks can cause enormous damage to anything in the vicinity. Thus, the guild treats an approaching Shen Gaoren like an elder dragon, repelling it with full force at any cost. The Carapaceons may be one of the smallest groups of extant monsters, but they represent one of the most fascinating branches of the guild phylogeny. Their life cycles, their artifacts, their seeming intelligence, all valuable avenues of study one could dedicate a lifetime to. The world is not merely made up of wyvern, as the beauty of nature dwells in many forms. As always, a big thank you to everyone who supports the channel through Patreon or YouTube channel memberships. I would like to extend a special thank you to A. Jackson, Admiral Frost, Alistair in Wonderland, Anjanath Tamer's Ambience, Artur Centeno, Austin, Autumns, Black Ace 202, B, Bruggy, British Empire, Chocolate Coat, Claire Miboon, Dragonlord, Dissy, Ethan Toombs, Theopuz, Habo Himbro Mirror, Harpier, Hashi, Hellbug Hunter, Hutsan. I'm just happy to be here. Inepts, Iron Camel, Jacob Coleman, Jan Steiner, Jacob the Numbnut, Joey Tribby 58, Magenta, Julia Benebik, Yurif, Carl the Crab, Kelly Barnett, Kogath, Lex Aegis, Lieferdienst, Ludicious Flow, Lufish, M1 Have 1 2, Macaroni Leviathan, Makamawi, Makut02, MatHat124, Meta Defiance, Mr. Pyramid, Molly Mockery, Morgul Blank, My Name Gone, Nils Schlatter, Noah Schantz, Oakwood Tree, Paige Gandalf Soda, Person 212, Precum King, Punonym, Quali, Rambling Robin, Raspberry, Regal Eagle, Resident Neko Arc, Ronger97, Rose, Ryan Hook, Skiba, Shebo, Sir Newt Newt, Soruka, Tacti Wolf, The Dollarfish, Thick, Unkwit Good Puss, Uthduna is an Octopus, Varaxus, Vulgar Beast, Wandering Soul, Zaffi, Thino Garthia, Zion H.V. Augenson, Zyperius Volkvar, and Kuro Neko. Thank you all so much again, and I'll see you around. Take care, everybody. Bye.